Welcome to EFFector from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. This is the audio edition of EFF's email newsletter geared towards keeping you on the bleeding edge of your digital rights. This is EFFector Volume 37, Issue 2, titled Fresh Threats to Privacy Around the Globe. This issue was published in February 2025, and I'm your host, membership advocate Christian Romero. Let's start with our top features. First up, cornered by the UK's demand for an encryption backdoor, Apple turns off its strongest security setting. In response to the UK's demands for a backdoor, Apple has stopped offering users in the UK advanced data protection, an optional feature in iCloud that turns on end-to-end encryption for files, backups, and more. As we've said time and time again, any backdoor built for governments put everyone at greater risk of hacking, identity theft, and fraud. Next up, EFF sues DOJ and the Office of Personnel Management to halt ransacking of federal data. EFF has fought to protect privacy for nearly 35 years at the local, state, and federal level, as well as around the world. We're glad to join the barrage of lawsuits defending Americans' privacy from brazen violations that have played out across multiple federal agencies in the US. Alright, now let's go through some EFF updates. First up, stop censoring abortion, the fight for reproductive rights in the digital age. With reproductive rights under fire across the US and globally, access to accurate abortion information has never been more critical, and, alarmingly, censorship of this information by social media companies appears to be increasing. In response to this growing issue, EFF has partnered with Repro Uncensored Coalition to collect stories from individuals and organizations who have faced censorship on these platforms to expose the true scale of the issue. If you've been affected, let us know. Next up, mad at Meta? Don't let them collect and monetize your personal data. You might think of Meta as a social media company, but its primary business is surveillance advertising. If you want to limit Meta's ability to profit from your personal data, here's what you need to know. Next up, analyzing the privacy impact of RedNote. EFF has independently confirmed that RedNote retrieves posted content over plaintext HTTP. Due to this lack of even basic transport layer encryption, we don't think this application is safe for anyone to use. Even if you don't care about giving your data to China, it's not safe to use any application that doesn't use encryption by default. Next up, when platforms and government unite, remember what's private and what isn't. As companies and the government become more entwined through CEO friendships, bureaucratic entanglements, and ideological harmony, we should all be asking what online data is private and what is sitting on a company's servers and accessible to corporate leadership at the drop of a hat. Next up, we've got a victory. Federal court finally rules backdoor searches of 702 data unconstitutional. Last month, a federal district court held that backdoor searches of databases full of Americans' private communications collected under Section 702 ordinarily require a warrant. In light of this ruling, we ask Congress to uphold its responsibility to protect civil rights and civil liberties by refusing to renew Section 702 absent a number of necessary reforms. Next up, Senate passes Take It Down Act, threatening free expression and due process. As currently drafted, the Take It Down Act, recently passed by the Senate, mandates a notice and takedown system that threatens free expression, user privacy, and due process, without addressing the problem it claims to solve. This misguided bill can still be stopped in the House of Representatives. Tell your representative to vote no on this bill. Now let's go through some announcements. First up, EFF at Scale 22X. EFF is excited to be back in Pasadena, California for Scale. Stop by the EFF booth to chat with some of our team and learn about the latest news in defending digital freedom for all. Next up, affecting change. Is there hope for social media? Is it possible to effectively build the kind of communities we want online while avoiding the pitfalls that have driven people away? Join our panel where we'll be exploring the future of free expression online and why social media might still be worth saving. And EFF thanks its organizational members. EFF thanks Fastly, Corellium, CypherCon, DeleteMe, Scale, and CactusCon for their generous support helping us fight for your rights online. To learn more about organizational membership and how your team can make an impact, visit EFF.org/thanks. And now it's finally time to go through some mini links. This first one comes from BBC. Critics say new Google rules put profits over privacy. EFF's Lena Cohen explained how Google's decision to lift its ban on fingerprinting shows a blatant disregard for user privacy. Quote, the same tracking techniques that Google claims are essential for online advertising also expose individuals' sensitive information to data brokers, surveillance companies, and law enforcement. End quote. This next one comes from Reason. As migrant arrests and deportations increase, remember you have a right to record ICE. Similar to filming the police as they operate, you have the right to film ICE as long as you are not obstructing official duties. Reason quoted our blog post offering general guidelines when it comes to filming law enforcement, including ICE. Next up from Dallas Morning News, watchdog organization calls for investigation as pregnancy centers spark privacy fears. Last month, EFF called on attorneys general in 4 states to investigate crisis pregnancy centers that may be misrepresenting protections around client information. Quote, we're just concerned that people are providing deeply personal information in a time of crisis and not realizing that there might not actually be enforceable guidelines around how that information is being handled. End quote, EFF's Corinne McSherry told the Dallas Morning News. Next up from Gizmodo, how a city uses Fusus to spy on its poorest residents. Looking at data on police surveillance of subsidized housing residents obtained by Gizmodo, EFF's Beryl Lipton told the news site, quote, the idea that people who are already in a vulnerable space in their housing development are subject to increased levels of surveillance simply because that is where they live really highlights how inequitable and unjust these applications of surveillance can be. And our last mini link comes from the San Francisco Chronicle. Judge tosses tech exec's lawsuit against journalist who published his arrest report. Although courts have the power to seal records in appropriate cases, if and when someone provides a copy of a sealed record to a reporter, that reporter shouldn't be forced to ignore the newsworthy information in that record. As EFF's Tori Noble said in a blog post quoted by the San Francisco Chronicle, instead they should be allowed to do what journalists do, report the news. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing or would like to learn more, subscribe at EFF.org/EFFector. Did you know EFF is a member-supported nonprofit organization? You can help us protect digital freedoms online for everyone by donating at EFF.org/effect and even grab some of our latest member gear. Thanks for your support, and I hope you'll join us for the next issue of EFFector.